So, on some level, every aquarium is different. Even if you set it up the same, it's impossible to really introduce the exact same amount of micro and macrofauna. Everything's different, everything's growing at different rates. Populations of animals and small creatures rise and fall. It's not always clear the reason why some of these populations are rising and falling, but anytime you have a new aquarium, especially a new aquarium, there are so many variables, and it really is a great experiment. If you can look at it as an experiment, doesn't mean it's a waste of time or you're not going to put effort into it or you're not going to manipulate it some, but it's the results of it should be looked at open-mindedly. When you have certain expectations, you're going to probably be disappointed if you know in your mind exactly how this whole thing is going to turn out. You're going to struggle. It's perfectly okay and great to have an idea or a plan for an aquarium, to have a sense of, okay, this is, my picture, or I want it to look this certain way. That's totally fine. But remain open-minded with what's happening. And I guess really it's the interpretation that gets us in trouble. You have to be very careful of your interpretation, and it's better to observe open-mindedly. Doesn't mean you can't react. Maybe just try not to react so prematurely. Try to really get a grasp of what's happening in the aquarium through observation, direct observation, not observing other people's opinions online. Again, valuable tool sometimes, but nothing beats direct observation. Nothing beats direct, open-minded observation. Doesn't mean you have to sit and watch the train wreck. Sometimes you have to try to stop the train. Sometimes, though, through misinterpretation, you're trying to stop something that is impossible to stop, or irrelevant to stop, or harmful to stop. When we don't understand all the inner workings of Mother Nature or this aquarium, that's more than okay. That's fine. I think it's difficult for human brains to really conceptualize just how vast the connections are between the creatures and the creatures in the environment. I think it's very hard for us to see the whole picture of how different relationships are affecting other relationships, especially on a very large scale. You're looking through a microscope slide and you can see interactions between several creatures, but it's hard to see the interactions between the whole organism as itself. You could take away those little what seems like insignificant creatures. You can take some of those away and assume it will have no effect on these other group of creatures, but there's actually a direct relationship, and it's difficult to understand that relationship. So once we think we understand it, here's the danger in understanding what's happening, then we know how to manipulate it. So once we understand something, then we know how to change it, fix it, manipulate it. And some of those manipulations are okay, but again, we don't necessarily understand the repercussions of our actions while doing something major or minor in the aquarium. Observe a lot. Look at this aquarium. That's the biggest, most important thing, is observe. Come back and check, come back and check, come back and check. Oh wow, that's still doing that thing. Yes, okay. Hey, I remember I had this problem in the beginning. Hydra was totally covering every square inch of the aquarium, and now it's not. Interesting. Now, while it was going on, I was in a full-fledged panic attack because I knew in my head, because of everything I've been told, that my tank was doomed. Let it ride and see what happens. Maybe everything dies. Maybe there is possible catastrophic outcomes with these experiments. Absolutely. If and there's no level that's quote unquote serious, but if you're really into it, you'll have lots going on, and you will have built and tore down mini aquariums. If you're really deep into it, you already know that, oh, some things just don't work out. And if you're not willing to, tear them down and build them and tear down and build them, then you really don't get the pleasure of that observation experiment stage. If it has to work no matter what, then you're going to find yourself being very fixed in certain methods, because those methods work, and because you cannot have failure, because this cannot be a total train wreck and lose everything and lose all the money invested, then you can't experiment. So once you release some of that control, you start to have an open-minded of the outcome, or you're open-minded of possible outcomes. Then you can really try things that maybe you've been told don't work, or maybe you have a hunch will work, or maybe it's just pure, okay, when I put these things together, what does it do to the water chemistry? Can I use limestone? Can I use, crushed coral? What's that going to do with my water? Because all water is so radically different. That was the biggest thing I learned off the rip was, okay, water's not water. What's dissolved into water, what water is carrying with it, the memory of water is so drastically different from one location to another. Even 2 miles down the road, the water could be some different, especially if you're on wells. Depends what's under the ground, depends where they're pulling it from. We have these expectations that this experiment has to go a certain way, even though I do not understand every little interaction going on, even though sometimes it just doesn't work. And that's okay.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.